This is our sort of batch of things that you didn't get to see that some of them I'm glad you didn't and some of them I wish you would have, time permitting, but it wasn't. So this is actually, now this wasn't a deleted level. This was the prototype that the team put together. I don't even know what the date on this is, but you know, 3 years ago, and it was really just to get the basic mechanics, not even tuned or anything, but you know, you could run, you could swim, you could swing, and if you look at this level a little bit, you'll see we certainly didn't reuse any of the main art, but you'll see kind of like that shot there is sort of the precursor to some of the shots we have in the game. The rope swinging mechanic, and a lot of this, so you'll recognize if you've played the game and remembered the game, you'll recognize some of the level when you pull into Athens at first. This bottom section is based on that, and the whole cliffs that you climb here, we actually just sort of ripped these out directly from the demo and built the cliffs level, the Cliffs of Madness or the Cliffs of Insanity. I forget what we ended up calling it. God, it's amazing to see this little guy running around. He looks so not like Kratos. That guy there was the original Cyclops who was dying, who just never really looked like a Cyclops. He just looked like a big guy with a stick. And then this was the room, the only room that we built that was like the final room, and everything else was kind of rough. And I remember seeing this and going, everybody saw this and said, man, this looks awesome. And then we were like, yeah, but how in the hell are we going to get, you know, all the levels in the game looking as good as that? And I don't know if we ended up getting them all looking as good as that, but I think we came a lot closer than I thought we would. This level's pretty cool. This was our test level for the Icarus wing. So, you know, Icarus and Daedalus. The Icarus story where he flew too close to the sun with the wings that he had made, and the wax melted and he fell to his death. That was sort of the inspiration for the mechanic. And I still love this. I absolutely wish this had made it into the game. We just, you know, it really came down to time and going, you know what, let's focus, let's get our fighting really good, and let's get our platforming better, and let's get our puzzles working, and maybe we can come back to this, and as is often the case, you just never have the chance to. So I'd love to see something like this, you know, in future God of War titles, because I think it's a great, it's just fun. I mean, it's fun to fly around, and what was cool about this is it wasn't just a flying level. It was, you know, you could land and you could walk around, and it was a seamless experience versus, you know, now it's time for the flying level. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, I look at this now and I'm like, damn, we should have gotten that in. It would have been awesome. These were the original Harpies. They were a lot bigger. They still read better. They look awesome, but we just realized we needed more of like a bat-like, small, like little annoyance enemy. These guys played like the skeletons, basically, flying versions of the skeletons, and there just wasn't much of a difference in gameplay, so we ended up kind of shrinking them down and making them bats. And this was what we called the Mounting the Titan level, which is Kratos, the giant titan in the desert. And sadly, right now, the only way you get on the Titan is through a movie. And originally, this was how it was going to be. You see this big thing, it's like a big watermelon in the background. That's actually Kratos. And Tobin, the designer, he's got him kind of moving towards the player, and those things that are falling are like mountains that are crumbling and stuff. So it's kind of like Kratos is rushing towards the player, crawling, and you're trying to run ahead of him in these platforming sections so that you can ultimately jump onto the structure that's on his back, and that'll lead you up to the temple. And I still love that idea. I really, really wish we could have done it. And it was just, we showed this to the tech guys, and we showed it to the artists, and they were just like, dude, that's going to take forever. This was the original boss. There was a boss that originally, look at that, that's awesome, that originally guarded Pandora's box. And again, we just didn't have time. And I know it's lame that that's the one thing I regret about the Pandora design, is that there are no bosses that guard the box. You have the Minotaur boss down below, and then we've got this conveyor belt section, and that's kind of it. And we just ran out of time. This was originally pretty cool. It was, you know, you had this moving platform up above, you had this giant kind of harpy vulture in the center that was guarding the box, and she had these eggs scattered all around the level, and in order to sort of entice her to fly around, you'd have to go find her eggs and break the eggs, and you'd kind of take the little baby birds inside, and you'd kind of carry them around and use them as bait. And again, not only was it kind of a cool mechanic because you were slower as you carried these things around, but also I think it really helped with the character of Kratos. I mean, here he is, you know, cracking open eggs and ripping out little infant birds and using them for his own his own desires and really pissing off this mama bird, I thought was pretty cool. So here's just another quick idea. These are almost like little sketches for levels, you know, where you have a big open environment and then you've got the walls come down and it becomes a maze, and you either do something and the walls come back up, or it's on a timer. I mean, we did tons of these things, you know, where I'd have an idea or a designer would have an idea and it was like, you know, try something like this. So this level is actually a level that we went so far as that we showed the press, we got it in magazines, and this was really a hard cut for us to make, and especially for me to make. I love the mechanic of it, and I love the platforming and the concept. And the concept was that you're riding this elevator, and you know, if you get knocked off, obviously you'll die. And if you get off the elevator, the idea was it was going to originally be being chased by this massive sandstorm. And the elevator was really the only thing. It was sort of a magical elevator that protected you from the sand. And if you got off the elevator would bypass you and the sandstorm would engulf you and kill you. And the two things we didn't have time to do is we didn't have time to tune it, and we didn't have time to build the sandstorm. But what I loved was this whole idea of, you know, getting off the elevator and having to catch back up with it. So, you know, you'd have these little forks in the road, and either you'd be forced, like coming up, you'd be forced to get off the elevator, or you could choose different paths. And if you took one path, it was more combat heavy, one path was more platform heavy. And as you can see, I mean, we had this pretty much finished from a standpoint of the art and the setup, but we were missing the big sandstorm and we were missing the tuning time to really make this fun, and so it ended up getting cut. This I love. This was great. This is great. I love this. The elevator now gets smaller. I guess we talked about putting this in the actual, oh, see, they suck. Whoever played this couldn't keep up with the elevator, but that was the whole idea, trying to keep up with the elevator. So it's tough. It's really tough when you have to cut ideas that you're really passionate about out of the game, but you do so you can make the other ideas that you do have in the game shine even brighter. So it's sort of a constant process, or it's a constant aspect of the process that's just a really tough thing that you go through, but I think it's worth it because it makes the overall product better.
Some of the earlier characters that had been played around with, some of them again just didn't feel right for the time period. Some of them either felt overdressed or felt too fantasy. A lot of the concepts too got very detailed. There were lots of flowing things, and there was lots of hair, and there was lots of things that if we had to just model it, it probably would have been a little bit tougher to pull it off. There was one character I remember when I first saw it that had kind of almost kind of a tribal feel to it, a very kind of African feel to it, which I thought was pretty cool. Didn't say Greek, but at the same time when I looked at that, I thought, you know, that would be a pretty cool character to work with.
We went through images of the lone wolf kind of characters where you might have a hero with a little baby or a dog on his back. So just to kind of give something different, you know, about the character and something that you can kind of relate to.
One of the original concepts behind the hero for God of War was to come up with a guy who was, his whole face was encased in a mask, and we thought that going with a mask would be, you know, being able to paint his face in broader strokes so that when you were playing the game, he still had a lot of personality and you could still sort of read that when you saw the mask. But when we actually got it in the game, it ended up feeling very soulless, and it didn't feel like the guy had a personality.
That was always one of the big elements that we were dealing with. You know, and it was difficult because, you know, we would often hear, "It's not Greek enough," and we're like, "What does that mean?" I'm using a actual, you know, sometimes because we'd take it right from a Greek, some Greek sources, you know, and it's very Greek. But I think what we really started seeing was, okay, no, it's not. It's not Greek enough according to what the general public knows, and that's kind of what we had to go towards.
These are again very traditional. Some of these were very traditional kind of Greek images, and again, the more traditional it got, the more armor we put on him, the more he lost his individualism.
Every time we put something on, you know, Dave felt like, oh, he doesn't look brutal anymore, and we started realizing brutal also kind of related to the primal part of him, you know, and so we did spend a lot of time going through that, in the end, we ended up still taking his clothes off, and that's what we went with. So,
when I first saw this from Charlie, it was the first time that I really saw the brutal nature and the violent nature and the sort of the animalistic quality that would really become the foundation for Kratos. And I think starting to see these images was just like sort of confirmation that this idea could really work. And instead of giving him a traditional sword, going with these sort of chain blades was going to be much more dynamic and fluid and really fun to play with. The main goal for the character in the game was always to create someone that looked really brutal and really nasty and really violent. Instead of sort of going down the traditional route of a iconic Greek hero with the plume helmet and the skirt and the toga and the sandals, we wanted someone who really made the player feel like he was being able to unleash his dark side. So the idea was always, how can we make him look more brutal? How can we make him look more violent and impulsive and nasty? And that desire always superseded sort of historical accuracy. So while you look at this guy and he may not totally feel at home in ancient Greece from a costume standpoint, I think he achieves the greater purpose, which is to give players a character that they can play who really does let them just go nuts and unleash the nasty fantasies they have in their head. The things I said to him, I said brutal, nasty, violent, antisocial, pissed off, angry, fuck you. That was my direction to Charlie.
The hardest part about making Kratos was that the storyline wasn't really there yet. And so I was trying to create a character that didn't have that story behind him yet.
I just said, come into work and get angry and see what happens. What they came back with was their versions of anger and the things that they were mad at and the things that, it was really kind of neat because you got to look at the concept art and kind of see how everybody dealt with anger and madness and chaos. The solution was to sort of start stripping away everything. Every time we took away a piece of armor, every time we took away a helmet, a shield, we started seeing more of this animalistic side to this character. Once we got that, it was just an issue of whittling it down, you know, from those 15 images, all of which felt the most brutal, and said out of all these 15, that's the one. God of War is our attempt to really elevate the action-adventure genre to the next level.
We're trying to do so much right now. I mean, we want to bring this, you know, this experience to people, and we want it to be realistic. In order to do that, we have to push the PlayStation 2 as far as it possibly can go.
We use a well-known art package called Maya to do almost everything in our game.
When we first started the game, it was how do you create beautiful, lush environments that are high polygon count, high texture detailed, beautiful lighting, and just consistent through the game.
Technologically, 4 or 5 years into a console, you know, most of the big problems have been solved. So it's just a question of doing it better than everyone else.
You first start with the sheet, and the sheet is also known as collision. That's the very bare bones, minimum level of detail that the player actually interacts on. Any of these walls that the player can't go beyond. So this is the confines of the level. This is what, you know, what you're actually playing in, but that's not what you see. That's what the game's running in the background. If I turn the sheet off, now you can see there's actual artwork associated with that.
Well, we definitely wanted to make the player feel like they were in ancient Greece.
You know, it's to go from really dark, depressing feelings where you feel like, I just want to get out of here, to you know, very bright, and you're in the desert, and it's you know, it's to make you feel like, wow, okay, it's a vast world. You know, it's really big world out there.
God of War is it's gonna look real, but it's also gonna have a take to it, you know, like a little bit of a fantasy twist, over the top, like blood and guts.
I don't think that there's any other PlayStation game that achieves that that's out there.
every character in the game starts out with a single pose that every single animation derives from. When I'm starting to move like this, bring in the base pose, and then kind of just start to block a few things out. Maybe even with general, just kind of moving the whole character all as one, getting the timing for things, and then building out from the pelvis. So get the pelvis motion right, then get the chest involved with the pelvis, then maybe start doing the arms, come back with the legs, then finish with the head and the fingers. So sort of whittling down until I get to that final look.